All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, I'll be doing my preview and prediction for USC versus Stanford. Trojans, 14-point favorites. I heard that line is around 9 as well. I'm not really sure what the spread is. In between 9 or 14. 2 possessions, basically. Over-unders at 65.5. This one will be on primetime ABC at 7:30 Eastern Time from Stanford Stadium. 62-24 to 1 all-time lead for the Trojans. Looking at the USC Offense, this is a team that scored 66 points. Not all of that came from the offense. We'll get to what the defense did here in a minute. But Caleb Williams and these guys looked flawless. 19-22, 249. He had 68 rushing, which led the team. Him and Jordan Addison hooked up for 2 touchdowns, getting right to it. Caleb Williams picking up right where he left off last year, being dominant here in Lincoln Riley's offense. He was confident as a passer. Looked like he was having fun as a runner as well, shaking guys in the open field. There's a lot of energy in this football team with Lincoln Riley coming over, and you can see it on both sides of the ball. They got a lot of different guys involved. 12 different players caught a pass. 4 different running backs got touches, none more than 6. Relic Brown, he had a touchdown, the 5-star true freshman. He led the team with 6 carries. That was also Untitled Williams, but they got everyone involved. Austin Jones, Darwin Barlow, Travis Dye as well. It was just a little taste of everything, I think, is what Lincoln Riley was going for in this game. Because, Marlon Williams, Kyron Hudson, these guys had a handful of grabs. Taj Washington had 4 receptions for 65 yards. They're just getting everybody involved, really. Incredibly deep offense for USC. They added a lot of transfers. These guys are absolutely absurd when it comes from a talent standpoint. Left guard Andrew Voorhees, he leads an offensive line that has improved drastically. Well, this is going to be a big test here, against Stanford. Obviously, their defense, I'll get to them here in a minute as well. But it's going to be interesting to see what they can do on the road against Stanford, a team that typically has USC's number. It's obviously a different regime here, a lot different now with Lincoln Riley at the helm. But for the most part, this is an offense that got a lot of guys involved. Caleb Williams looked great, very confident. But, what would the game plan be in this game now that they enter conference play? Who are going to be the lead dogs? You could probably circle Jordan Addison and Travis Dye. Then after that, who are going to be the, main supporting cast players? Unless this is the game plan every week. I know it's hard to keep some of these guys off the field with how talented they are. But I'm not sure if that's going to be the game plan heading forward. Brendan Rice, low usage of a grab for 5 yards. Gary Bryant as well, only 7 yards on a grab. So we'll see what happens with USC. It's a very big storyline to watch, I would say. Can they live up to expectations and deliver an offense, as they enter Pac-12 play? It'll be something to monitor. But I do think Caleb Williams and these guys, they're going to be a tough bunch all year long. An interesting test here. Looking at the Stanford offense, I do think that this group can give USC some problems. Tanner McKee, a legit NFL prospect, 22 for 27, 300-plus yards in the debut against Colgate. He also had a pick. E.J. Smith, we told 168 yards, ran for 100-plus. He found the end zone twice. The run game has been, completely dreadful the last few seasons. Ever since Bryce Love had that big, almost 2,000-yard season, they've just completely fell off the map. And, it's obviously encouraging to see some work done against an FCS school, but at the same time, that's not going to be much. Only 86 yards per game on the ground last year. It's been less than 130 the last couple seasons. They've been towards the bottom in run yards per game. They're not effective. They're not efficient. Their second best yardage total on the year last season, though, came against USC. They couldn't run the ball one bit, but this team obviously had success against USC, and Clay Helton got fired the next day. So a lot has changed since then. With Stanford, though, they do get 5 starters back on the offensive line, guys like Miles Hinton. We'll see what happens. They had 0 tackles for loss against Colgate. That's encouraging. But again, we want to see what they can do against both of these teams. What can they do against legit opponents? Miles Hinton, right tackle, one of those guys that really underperformed last year. Walter Rouse, Branson Bragg. A lot of guys on this offensive line that really should be contending for NFL roster spots in the future. But that's not where they're at this moment in time. Last year, you really seen that. And that's a big reason why their offense has struggled, because their identity is to run the football, and they've just not been able to do it. And the same can be said about their defensive front. We'll get to that in a second. But this is not the same Stanford from a couple years ago. It's not the same brand that you're accustomed to seeing. And I think that's one thing that people are really not realizing, is that this is a completely different Stanford team. They're going to look to air it out in this game, and I think all year long, because they have a great group of pass catchers. You go look at guys like Michael Wilson, Elijah Higgins, Bryson Tremaine, who was phenomenal last year until he got injured. I think it was an ACL maybe. But he played in 5 games, and he ended up leading the team with 5 touchdowns. Guys that played double-figure contests did not even hit that mark, so they obviously weren't thriving the way they should. through the air as well. But Benjamin Yurcik, typical Stanford tight end. This guy's terrific. He led the team last year in yards and was right there in reception, 6'5", 235. There's nothing that's changed there. They're still producing pretty good tight ends. John Humphreys is another player that got a lot of work in his career. Bryce Farrell. I can keep on naming them, it seems. These guys are legit, I think, when it comes to talent and what they can do through the air. It's going to be a big opportunity to do it. I'm not really sure what to expect, though. I think this will be a one-dimensional Stanford offense. Again, they're playing It's difficult to predict. Here early in the year, we only got small sample size against teams that are not that good. But looking at, if you want to compare it to USC's defense last year, I think Stanford matches up pretty well. So I think that's going to be the assumption I'm going to go with. But I like what they have at wide receiver. E.J. Smith is talented. They'll get him the ball out of the backfield as well. This offensive line, all this continuity with the the experience they have, they should certainly start to progress this year. Colgate was a good start. We'll see what happens with Stanford, but this is overall a very high upside unit led by Tanner McKee, who could be a potential first rounder in April's draft. Looking at this USC defense, 3 of the first 4 drives for the Rice offense went for 60-plus yards, and then the defense settled down after that, only allowed 280 yards total, and then they shut them out in the second half. These guys had 3 pick-sixes, 4 picks total. What kind of energy will the secondary showcase versus that tough matchup I just alluded to with the passing game is my biggest thing. Kalen Bullock, he had a 93-yard pick-six. He's going to be one of those leaders in the secondary. This is a very young unit, though. I think you have about 3 sophomores here when you look at the depth chart. Max Williams, he's an older guy at free safety. And Mekhi Blackman, a transfer from Colorado, kind of leading this group. It's going to be interesting to see how they progress through the year because they're still very young. But one thing they lacked during Clay Helton's tenure was just confidence and energy. This is something I just mentioned. The lack of pass rush obviously was not good because these corners had their backs turned for 8 seconds plus, and then they were expected to not come up with pass interference plays. And that was just the consistent theme of Clay Helton and USC. And I think that's something they're going to look to do differently here with Alex Grinch calling the plays on defense. But they're very young in the secondary all around. There's not much experience one bit. Bryson Shaw and Blackman, those are about it when it comes to veterans. Those are the only 2 seniors I see. So this is going to be a big test for them. There's not much they can do. If they're getting torn up, these starters are having issues, there's not many guys they can put in to kind of fix that. Linebacker 3 transfers, and Shane Lee, who led the team in tackles, Eric Gentry. Those guys were the top 2 tacklers against Rice, and Romeo Hyatt from Auburn. So they have a lot of new faces. Tyrone Talini, he was one of those transfers that stepped up. Tooley at defensive end. Corey Foreman, he was not unleashed against Rice. Nick Figueroa. Overall, a lot of transfers, a lot of youth on this defense, but I think the defensive line's a pretty interesting unit because I got some depth there, like Brandon Philly. He's still around. Big contest here. I'm really not sure what to expect. If I had to guess, Stanford's offense, they'll probably, score about 3 or 4 touchdowns, I would expect. That's going to be what I'm thinking. Overall, does the front 7 learn to play football again is a big question because against Clay Helton, they just cannot defend the run. The fundamentals were just awful. Bad angles, can't tackle, lack of energy in that category as well. So USC, this is going to be a big stepping stone, even if their offense outscores everyone this year, including in this game against Stanford. Even if they put up 50 or 60 points, you're going to learn a lot about the defense because that's going to be the unit that carries them to the promised land or not. It'll be a big game here. If I had to guess, the secondary will likely struggle against this Stanford passing attack, especially if they cannot find a passer. Stanford defense, they have a big opportunity here to kind of prove some naysayers wrong. Me especially, freshman defensive end David Bailey, he's a top 80 recruit they landed. He's going to have to carry them this season because they don't have a lot of playmaking on this defensive line. The lack of depth and size will be tested. Depth was an issue last year, and they replaced 4 starters up front, which, I don't know how that's even possible. Stanford really just bad draw when it comes to the defensive line. They've not been able to keep that unit stacked. And that's why I say this is not the same Stanford team from years past because they're just not as dominant as they are accustomed to in the trenches. Not even close. The offense struggled many years ago, and the defense finally caught up this past season as they were one of the worst against the run. 127th in college football. 33 touchdowns given up, 235 yards. And they got a tough matchup here, in the middle. I think USC is going to look to attack. I think they'll win vertically as well. That's why these linebackers, Levani Tumani and Tristan Sinclair, these guys are going to be leaned on a lot. They're going to be quite physical. And the depth at linebacker is actually pretty solid for Stanford, which is good because these guys are going to be using their shoulders every single play. That's what I expect here. Guys like Anthony Franklin, Zach Buckley, a defensive tackle, are forced in here, and they're only 260 pounds or so because they have not had enough time to, fill out their frames. They're being pressed into action, and there's no depth. So I'm very concerned this season with this front 4 for Stanford. I think they're going to get ran all over in this game. It'd be absolutely impressive if they can hold them under 200 yards or even 150 rushing. That'd be really good. But there is veterans at linebacker, like I said, with that depth. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Tristan Sinclair is one of those guys that's going to split time with Jacob Magnum-Farrar. We'll see what happens there. I think the linebackers, though, they're going to have to be very crucial. They're going to be the biggest reason probably why this team would win the game if they do. Secondary, though, I like what they got. 5 total seniors in the back end led by Kai Blue Kelly. This is a phenomenal player. Grid ball skills. He can cover. Kendall Williamson. This guy's been around forever, it seems like. And then Oklahoma transfer Pat Fields. He can play nickel. He can play safety. They're going to look to utilize him a good bit in this game as his experience is going to be needed. I like how they match up against this receiver group because it's a deep one like I alluded to earlier. Who will win this matchup? If I had to guess, I'd probably pick the USC wide receivers just because these corners and these safeties, they're not going to have a lot of effort from those guys, I don't believe. So they're going to have to hold up for too long, for too much in this game. I just don't see it happening. I think Blue Kelly might shadow Jordan Addison. That'd probably be their best shot in this game on defense. It's going to be another one of those interesting matchups. We're going to learn a lot, though. But overall, for the Stanford defense, they're going to get grinded down on all year long, especially in this game. USC, they probably wouldn't have to throw it much, but I think it's going to force those linebackers up a bit. And they're going to have those crossing routes available for guys like Taj Washington that can burn you. So Stanford defense, even though I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible, and there's certainly some bright spots like Bailey. I expect big things from him. It's going to be tough, even though they have veterans in the secondary. Maybe against a different offense, that'd be really good this year, and that's going to be kind of like their backbone of the defense. But against USC, I just don't see that happening in this ball game. Looking at team comparisons, USC has the edge on everything. Obviously, this is because of the transfer portal. They added a lot. The offensive line for Stanford, of course, they got those 5 returning starters back. They were just completely poor last year. And I do think at the end of the year they could potentially surpass USC if David Shaw does what he's accustomed to. I don't think they're too far behind at pass catcher either. Just USC is so deep, like 6 or 7 deep. They got guys that can really tear you apart. They could be starters at other programs. Stanford, like guys like Bryson Tremaine, Michael Wilson, Elijah Higgins. I mean, they got seniors and they got leadership, they got production. So I think Stanford, their receiving game is not far behind. Neither is their quarterback, Tanner McKee, right now, slated to be a first or second round pick in the draft. Caleb Williams, though, he's just a superb talent, one of the Heisman favorites. Running back, Austin Jones, a former Stanford guy. He transfers over to join Barlow and Dye and Brown, who got 8 touches in week 1. So overall, I just think that USC, they have the edge everywhere other than the secondary. There's a big difference in the secondary because there's a lot of youth in the Trojan one, while in the Stanford, like I said, 5 seniors. So big difference there. We'll see what happens in the back end. Linebacker, Stanford, they're not too far behind there either. I think USC kind of edges them out in that category as well. Overall, big edge here when you look at these 2 rosters for USC. This is just a different Stanford team than we're accustomed to seeing. My final thoughts and prediction, keys to the game for USC, showcase defensive improvements and stay disciplined versus the pass. That's going to be a big key for them because I expect it to be a one-dimensional offense for Stanford. If you can kind of keep things in front of you here against the Cardinals, then I think it'll be pretty good shape for this game. Stanford, don't get outclassed in the trenches. That's probably what's going to happen. Like I keep harping on, the Cardinal brand of football has completely disappeared, but this would be a great opportunity to earn some respect back. I'm a USC fan, so I'm not going to make a prediction on this one. My co-host Nick, who's unable to join us today, he made this 35-14. I do think we'll probably see more points than that. I think USC would be lucky to hold them to 14 because I think the expectation for me is 21 to 24 points at the minimum. USC, I think that'd be a win for Stanford if they could hold them to 35. So interesting score there from Nick. Do expect to see a lot of points in this one. Again, I'm a fan, so I'm not going to make a prediction. But USC probably should win this game when you look at the matchups. But Stanford, I would not be shocked one bit hosting the Trojans here because over the years they've just completely disappointed. And that passing attack, they have a real edge, I think. So if they can keep the USC guys on the sideline, commit less mistakes than the Trojans, then they could definitely win this game. But I do think that USC has the edge that you're looking for in terms of matchups, and I think that'll be one difference maker to watch. That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.